Maya Carter stood outside Riverside High School with her mother on a cold Monday morning in October. She touched her headscarf nervously, making sure it covered her bald head completely. The chemotherapy had taken all her hair 3 months ago, and she still wasn't used to seeing herself without it. Her mother, Linda, squeezed her hand and smiled, trying to give her courage for this first day at a new school. Maya was 15 years old and had been diagnosed with lymphoma 6 months earlier. The doctors said she had a good chance of beating it, but the treatment was making her sick and tired all the time. She had missed the first month of school because of her treatments, and now she was trying to catch up with everything while still going to the hospital every 2 weeks for more chemotherapy. They walked into the main office together, and Principal Harris greeted them with a warm smile. He was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes, and he shook both their hands firmly. He told them that the school would do everything possible to help Maya succeed, and that her teachers had been informed about her medical situation. He assigned her to Mrs. Bennett's homeroom class and gave her a schedule and a map of the school. Linda hugged Maya tight before leaving and whispered in her ear that she was proud of her. Maya felt tears starting but blinked them back. She had to be strong. Her father, Commander James Carter, was deployed overseas with his Navy SEAL team, and she knew he would want her to be brave. Before he left 2 months ago, he had held her face in his hands and told her she was the strongest person he knew, even stronger than any soldier he had ever met. Maya walked down the hallway to her homeroom, clutching her schedule and trying not to notice all the stares. Other students looked at her headscarf and whispered to their friends. She could feel her face getting hot with embarrassment. She wished she could just disappear or that her hair would magically grow back overnight so she could look normal again. Mrs. Bennett was a middle-aged woman with curly red hair and a friendly smile. She introduced Maya to the class and told everyone to make her feel welcome. Maya took a seat near the back of the room, hoping to stay invisible. A girl with brown hair and freckles in the next seat smiled at her and whispered that her name was Sophie. Maya smiled back, feeling a tiny bit of relief that at least one person seemed nice. But 3 rows over, Maya noticed a group of girls staring at her and whispering behind their hands. The leader was a pretty blonde girl who looked at Maya like she was something dirty. The blonde girl leaned over to her friends and said something that made them all laugh while looking directly at Maya. Maya felt her stomach twist with fear. She recognized that look from her old school before she got sick. It was the look of someone who had decided to make her life miserable. The morning classes went by slowly. Maya tried to focus on what the teachers were saying, but she kept noticing the blonde girl and her friends watching her. In English class, they sat right behind her, and she heard them whispering about her headscarf. One of them said something about looking like a freak, and the others giggled. Maya pretended not to hear, but her hands shook as she tried to take notes. At lunch, Sophie invited Maya to sit with her, which was kind. But as they walked through the cafeteria, the blonde girl stuck out her foot and tried to trip Maya. Maya stumbled but caught herself, and her lunch tray wobbled dangerously. The blonde girl smirked and said loudly that maybe Maya should watch where she was going. Her friends laughed like it was the funniest thing they had ever seen. Sophie told Maya not to pay attention to them. She explained that the blonde girl's name was Brittany Hughes, and that she was basically the queen of the school. Her 2 best friends were Nicole and Amanda, and they followed Brittany around like puppies. Sophie said they were mean to a lot of people, but they usually got away with it because Brittany's mom was on the school board and made a big fuss whenever anyone tried to punish her daughter. That afternoon in gym class, Maya had to sit out because she got tired too easily from the chemo. She sat on the bleachers with a note from her doctor, while the other students played basketball. Brittany made sure to walk past her and say loudly to Nicole that it must be nice to be lazy and get out of class. Maya bit her lip and looked down at her hands, fighting back tears. She wondered if she should tell someone, but she didn't want to be a snitch or make things worse. After school, Linda picked her up and asked how her first day went. Maya lied and said it was fine, that everyone was nice and the teachers seemed good. She didn't want to worry her mother, who already had enough stress dealing with the medical bills and taking care of Maya's younger brother Kenny. Linda looked relieved and started talking about dinner plans, not noticing how quiet Maya had become. That night, Maya had a video call scheduled with her father. He was somewhere in the Middle East on a classified mission, but he always made time to talk to her when he could. When his face appeared on the screen, tired but smiling, Maya felt some of the tension leave her body. He asked about her first day, and she tried to keep her voice cheerful as she told him about her classes and teachers. She didn't mention Brittany or the mean comments or the feeling of being watched all day. Her father studied her face through the screen, his dark eyes serious. He had always been able to tell when she was hiding something, even from thousands of miles away. He asked if everything was really okay, and Maya nodded quickly, forcing a smile. She told him she was just tired from the chemo and that she missed him. He said he missed her too and that he was proud of how strong she was being. He reminded her that Carter women were fighters and that she had his warrior blood in her veins. After they said goodbye, Maya lay in bed and touched her headscarf. She thought about what her father had said about being a fighter. But how was she supposed to fight when she was already fighting cancer? How much strength did one person have to have? She closed her eyes and tried to sleep, hoping tomorrow would be better, but somehow knowing it wouldn't be. Maya Carter stood outside Riverside High School with her mother on a cold Monday morning in October. She touched her headscarf nervously, making sure it covered her bald head completely. The chemotherapy had taken all her hair 3 months ago, and she still wasn't used to seeing herself without it. Her mother, Linda, squeezed her hand and smiled, trying to give her courage for this first day at a new school. Maya was 15 years old and had been diagnosed with lymphoma 6 months earlier. The doctors said she had a good chance of beating it, but the treatment was making her sick and tired all the time. She had missed the first month of school because of her treatments, and now she was trying to catch up with everything while still going to the hospital every 2 weeks for more chemotherapy. They walked into the main office together, and Principal Harris greeted them with a warm smile. He was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes, and he shook both their hands firmly. He told them that the school would do everything possible to help Maya succeed, and that her teachers had been informed about her medical situation. He assigned her to Mrs. Bennett's homeroom class and gave her a schedule and a map of the school. Linda hugged Maya tight before leaving and whispered in her ear that she was proud of her. Maya felt tears starting but blinked them back. She had to be strong. Her father, Commander James Carter, was deployed overseas with his Navy SEAL team, and she knew he would want her to be brave. Before he left 2 months ago, he had held her face in his hands and told her she was the strongest person he knew, even stronger than any soldier he had ever met. Maya walked down the hallway to her homeroom, clutching her schedule and trying not to notice all the stares. Other students looked at her headscarf and whispered to their friends. She could feel her face getting hot with embarrassment. She wished she could just disappear, or that her hair would magically grow back overnight so she could look normal again. Mrs. Bennett was a middle-aged woman with curly red hair and a friendly smile. She introduced Maya to the class and told everyone to make her feel welcome. Maya took a seat near the back of the room, hoping to stay invisible. A girl with brown hair and freckles in the next seat smiled at her and whispered that her name was Sophie. Maya smiled back, feeling a tiny bit of relief that at least one person seemed nice. But 3 rows over, Maya noticed a group of girls staring at her and whispering behind their hands. The leader was a pretty blonde girl who looked at Maya like she was something dirty. The blonde girl leaned over to her friends and said something that made them all laugh while looking directly at Maya. Maya felt her stomach twist with fear. She recognized that look from her old school before she got sick. It was the look of someone who had decided to make her life miserable. The morning classes went by slowly. Maya tried to focus on what the teachers were saying, but she kept noticing the blonde girl and her friends watching her. In English class, they sat right behind her, and she heard them whispering about her headscarf. One of them said something about looking like a freak, and the others giggled. Maya pretended not to hear, but her hands shook as she tried to take notes. At lunch, Sophie invited Maya to sit with her, which was kind. But as they walked through the cafeteria, the blonde girl stuck out her foot and tried to trip Maya. Maya stumbled but caught herself, and her lunch tray wobbled dangerously. The blonde girl smirked and said loudly that maybe Maya should watch where she was going. Her friends laughed like it was the funniest thing they had ever seen. Sophie told Maya not to pay attention to them. She explained that the blonde girl's name was Brittany Hughes and that she was basically the queen of the school. Her 2 best friends were Nicole and Amanda, and they followed Brittany around like puppies. Sophie said they were mean to a lot of people. But they usually got away with it because Brittany's mom was on the school board and made a big fuss whenever anyone tried to punish her daughter. That afternoon in gym class, Maya had to sit out because she got tired too easily from the chemo. She sat on the bleachers with a note from her doctor while the other students played basketball. Brittany made sure to walk past her and say loudly to Nicole that it must be nice to be lazy and get out of class. Maya bit her lip and looked down at her hands, fighting back tears. She wondered if she should tell someone, but she didn't want to be a snitch or make things worse. After school, Linda picked her up and asked how her first day went. Maya lied and said it was fine, that everyone was nice and the teachers seemed good. She didn't want to worry her mother, who already had enough stress dealing with the medical bills and taking care of Maya's younger brother, Kenny. Linda looked relieved and started talking about dinner plans, not noticing how quiet Maya had become. That night, Maya had a video call scheduled with her father. He was somewhere in the Middle East on a classified mission, but he always made time to talk to her when he could. When his face appeared on the screen, tired but smiling, Maya felt some of the tension leave her body. He asked about her first day, and she tried to keep her voice cheerful as she told him about her classes and teachers. She didn't mention Brittany or the mean comments or the feeling of being watched all day. Her father studied her face through the screen, his dark eyes serious. He had always been able to tell when she was hiding something, even from thousands of miles away. He asked if everything was really okay, and Maya nodded quickly, forcing a smile. She told him she was just tired from the chemo and that she missed him. He said he missed her too, and that he was proud of how strong she was being. He reminded her that Carter women were fighters, and that she had his warrior blood in her veins. After they said goodbye, Maya lay in bed and touched her headscarf. She thought about what her father had said about being a fighter. But how was she supposed to fight when she was already fighting cancer? How much strength did one person have to have? She closed her eyes and tried to sleep, hoping tomorrow would be better, but somehow knowing it wouldn't be. Mrs. Bennett marched Brittany, Nicole, and Amanda down to Principal Harris's office while Maya stood by her locker shaking. Other students scattered quickly, not wanting to get involved or be seen as witnesses. Mrs. Bennett told Maya gently to go to the nurse's office and rest for a while, and that she would call her mother. Maya nodded silently, grateful that someone had finally seen what was happening to her, but also terrified about what would happen next. In the principal's office, Brittany put on her innocent face and claimed they were just talking to Maya, and that Mrs. Bennett had misunderstood the situation. Nicole and Amanda backed her up immediately, saying they hadn't done anything wrong. Principal Harris looked tired as he listened to them, like he had heard these same lies from these same girls many times before. He told them he would be investigating the situation and that their parents would be called. Brittany's confident smile faltered just a little bit at that. Mrs. Bennett wasn't satisfied with just sending them to the office. She went back to her classroom and started asking other students what they had seen and heard over the past few weeks. At first, no one wanted to talk, afraid of becoming Brittany's next target. But Sophie spoke up bravely and told Mrs. Bennett everything she had witnessed. Once Sophie started talking, a few other students found their courage too and shared what they knew about the bullying and the social media posts and all the cruel things that had been happening. Meanwhile, Maya sat in the nurse's office with a cold compress on her head, feeling sick to her stomach. The school nurse was a kind older woman named Betty, who had seen Maya many times for her chemo-related symptoms. Betty didn't ask questions, just let Maya rest on the cot and brought her some water and crackers. She called Linda Carter and explained that Maya had been involved in an incident and should probably go home for the day. Linda arrived at the school within 30 minutes, her face tight with worry. She found Maya in the nurse's office looking small and scared, and her heart broke. Principal Harris called her to his office to explain what had happened, or at least what Mrs. Bennett had witnessed. As he talked, Linda's expression changed from worried to angry to absolutely furious. She asked him how long this had been going on without anyone noticing or doing anything to stop it. Principal Harris admitted that the school had failed Maya and that he took full responsibility. He explained that Brittany and her friends would face consequences, including suspension and mandatory counseling. He said the school would be implementing better monitoring and that he would personally make sure the bullying stopped. Linda listened to all of this with her arms crossed, her lawyer instincts kicking in as she mentally noted everything he said. But Linda knew that school consequences weren't enough. Her daughter had been tortured for weeks while adults looked the other way. The damage had been done, and some words on paper about policy changes wouldn't heal the wounds Maya carried. She thanked Principal Harris coldly and took Maya home, holding her daughter close as they walked to the car. In the parking lot, Maya finally broke down completely and sobbed in her mother's arms. That night, Linda waited until Maya was asleep before calling her husband. Commander James Carter answered from somewhere overseas where it was already morning. He had been expecting her call after Maya's breakdown a few nights earlier. Linda told him everything that had happened, every detail of the bullying and the school's inadequate response. She told him about finding their daughter broken and crying in the nurse's office, and about how angry she was at everyone who had let this happen. James listened in silence, and Linda could hear the dangerous calm in his breathing that meant he was controlling intense anger. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment before speaking. His voice was steady, but Linda could hear the promise of action underneath it. He told her he was coming home and that she should start documenting everything. He wanted copies of every social media post, statements from witnesses, records of every incident Maya had reported or that teachers had seen. He was building a case like he would build an operation plan. Linda asked him what he was planning to do. James said he was going to make sure that everyone involved understood that hurting his daughter had consequences. He said the school had proven they couldn't or wouldn't protect Maya, so he was going to step in and handle it himself. Linda knew that tone in her husband's voice. It was the same tone he used when he was going after enemy targets. She almost felt sorry for Brittany and anyone else who had hurt their daughter. Almost. Over the next 2 weeks, things got worse before they got better. Brittany and her friends were suspended for 3 days, but when they came back, they were angry and looking for revenge. They couldn't bully Maya openly anymore because teachers were watching, but they found subtle ways to make her life miserable. They would give her dirty looks in the hallway and whisper to other students who would then avoid Maya. The social media posts continued from anonymous accounts that couldn't be traced back to them. Maya stopped going to school some days, claiming she felt too sick from the chemo. Linda didn't push her because she could see that her daughter was depressed and anxious. Maya barely ate and had trouble sleeping. She stopped talking about school entirely and spent most of her time in her room alone. Linda watched her daughter fading away and felt helpless to stop it. She counted down the days until James would be home. Sophie tried to stay in touch with Maya, texting her every day and offering to bring her homework. Maya appreciated it but couldn't bring herself to respond most of the time. She felt like she was drowning in darkness and that nothing would ever get better. The cancer was bad enough, but at least that had a treatment plan and an end date. The bullying felt endless and inescapable. Maya's next chemo appointment was rough. The nurses noticed that she seemed more depressed than usual and gently asked if everything was okay. Maya just shrugged and said she was tired, which was true but not the whole truth. Linda talked to the oncologist privately and explained what was happening at school. The doctor looked concerned and said that stress and emotional trauma could actually affect Maya's recovery. He strongly recommended that something be done to improve Maya's mental health. That conversation made Linda even more determined to fix the situation. She went back to Principal Harris and demanded another meeting. This time she brought printed copies of all the social media posts, statements from Sophie and other witnesses, and a letter from Maya's oncologist about how the bullying was affecting her health. She laid it all out on his desk like evidence in a trial, and told him that if the school didn't take serious action, she would be contacting a lawyer and the media. Principal Harris looked at all the evidence and his face went pale. He hadn't realized the extent of what was happening or how organized and vicious the bullying campaign had been. He called in Mrs. Bennett and the school counselor, and they spent 2 hours going through everything. He promised Linda that there would be a real investigation and real consequences. He said he would be calling in Brittany's parents again, and that if the bullying continued, expulsion was on the table. Linda left that meeting feeling slightly better but still angry. She knew schools were often more concerned with avoiding lawsuits than actually protecting students. She didn't fully trust that Principal Harris would follow through. That night she called James again and told him about the meeting. He told her he had good news. His commanding officer had approved his emergency leave and he would be flying home in 3 days. Relief flooded through Linda at those words. She told Maya that night that her father was coming home early. For the first time in weeks, Maya smiled. She asked if he was coming because of her, and Linda said yes, that he loved her and wanted to make sure she was safe. Maya felt guilty that her father was leaving his important mission because of her problems, but she was also desperately grateful. She had never needed him more than she did right now. The next few days crawled by. Maya went to school but felt like she was just going through the motions. Brittany and her friends stayed away from her physically, but the psychological warfare continued. Maya found notes in her locker telling her to drop dead. Someone created a countdown on social media joking about how long until the cancer won. Every day was a fresh nightmare, and Maya felt herself breaking into smaller and smaller pieces. But she held on because she knew her father was coming. Commander James Carter was the strongest person she knew, and if anyone could fix this situation, it was him. She imagined him walking into the school in his uniform, his presence commanding respect and fear. She imagined Brittany's face when she realized that Maya wasn't some helpless victim without anyone to protect her. That fantasy was the only thing that kept Maya going through those final days of waiting. Commander James Carter arrived home on a Thursday evening just as the sun was setting. Maya heard the car pull into the driveway and ran to the front door faster than she had moved in weeks. When she saw her father step out of the car in his uniform, tall and strong and finally home, she burst into tears and ran into his arms. He caught her and held her tight, and Maya felt safe for the first time since the bullying started. James held his daughter for a long time, feeling how thin she had gotten and how hard she was crying. His jaw tightened with anger at the people who had done this to her, but his voice was gentle when he spoke. He told her that everything was going to be okay now, that he was home and he was going to fix everything. Maya believed him because her father had never broken a promise to her in her entire life. That night, the whole family had dinner together. Kenny, Maya's younger brother, was excited to have their dad home and talked nonstop about school and soccer. Maya was quiet, but she smiled more than she had in weeks, just from having her father at the table. After Kenny went to bed, Linda and James sat down with Maya and asked her to tell them everything again, every detail of what had happened. Maya talked for over an hour, and this time she didn't leave anything out. She told them about every cruel comment, every shove in the hallway, every humiliating incident in the cafeteria. She showed them the social media posts on her phone, even the ones she had tried to delete because they hurt too much to look at. She told them about eating lunch in the bathroom and crying herself to sleep every night. By the time she finished, her parents looked ready to go to war. James asked Maya for the names of everyone involved, and she gave him the list. Brittany Hughes, Nicole Peterson, and Amanda Walsh were the main three, but there were other students who had joined in or stood by and watched. James wrote down every name carefully in a small notebook he carried. He asked about teachers and administrators too, wanting to know who had helped and who had looked the other way. He was gathering intelligence like he would for a mission. The next morning, James got up early and put on civilian clothes, but anyone who saw him would know immediately that he was military. Something about the way he carried himself and the way his eyes assessed everything around him marked him as someone who had seen combat. He drove to Riverside High School and walked into the main office with the confident stride of someone who knew he belonged there. The secretary asked if she could help him, and James said he needed to speak with Principal Harris immediately. She started to say that the principal was busy and would need to schedule an appointment, but James gave her a look that made her pick up the phone and call the principal right away. Something about his presence made it clear that he wasn't going to be put off or dismissed. Principal Harris came out of his office 2 minutes later. James introduced himself as Commander Carter, Maya's father, and shook the principal's hand with a grip that was just firm enough to make a point. Principal Harris invited him into his office and closed the door. For the next hour, James questioned him about the bullying, about school policies, about what had been done and what hadn't been done. He spoke calmly, but there was an edge to his voice that made it clear he was not satisfied with the answers. Principal Harris explained that they had suspended the girls and were monitoring the situation. James listened and then pulled out his notebook and started reading back dates and incidents, many of which the school had no record of because no teacher had witnessed them or Maya hadn't reported them out of fear. He showed Principal Harris screenshots of social media posts that violated multiple school policies about cyberbullying and harassment. He made it clear that the school had failed to protect his daughter. Principal Harris looked uncomfortable as the evidence piled up. He admitted that the school could have done more and should have been more vigilant. He promised that additional measures would be taken immediately, James leaned back in his chair and studied the principal for a moment before speaking. He said he appreciated the promises, but that promises weren't enough anymore. He wanted to see action, and he wanted to be involved in deciding what that action would be. James proposed several things. First, he wanted a school-wide assembly where bullying would be addressed directly, and where the student body would understand that there would be serious consequences for anyone who harassed other students. Second, he wanted Brittany and her friends and their parents to meet with him and the principal together. Third, he wanted the school to implement a real anti-bullying program with training for teachers and staff on how to recognize and respond to harassment. Principal Harris agreed to all of it, though James could see he was nervous about some of the requests. The meeting with the bullies and their parents especially seemed to worry him, probably because he knew how angry those parents would be. But James didn't care about hurt feelings or ruffled feathers. His daughter had been tortured at this school, and everyone who had a part in it was going to face consequences. Over the next few days, James was busy making plans and gathering more information. He talked to Sophie and her parents, who were supportive and willing to provide statements about what they had witnessed. He talked to Mrs. Bennett, who felt guilty that she hadn't seen the bullying sooner but was committed to helping fix things. He even talked to a few other students who quietly admitted they had seen what was happening but had been too scared to speak up. James also made phone calls to people he knew from the military who specialized in leadership and team building. He wanted to create a program that would actually change the culture at the school, not just put a Band-Aid on the problem. One of his friends connected him with someone who ran character development programs for schools, and they started working together on a plan. Meanwhile, Maya stayed home from school. Her parents agreed that she needed time to recover emotionally before going back. She spent her days resting and doing homework that Sophie dropped off. She still had chemo appointments and they were still hard, but knowing her father was handling everything made them easier to bear. She started eating better and sleeping through the night again. Principal Harris scheduled the meetings with Brittany's, Nicole's, and Amanda's families for the following Monday. The parents were told their attendance was mandatory, and that the alternative was police involvement for cyberbullying and harassment. That got their attention fast. James prepared for those meetings like he prepared for interrogations, knowing exactly what he wanted to say and what outcomes he needed. Monday morning arrived and James went to the school in his dress uniform. He wanted these families to understand exactly who they were dealing with and what his daughter came from. The uniform was covered in medals and ribbons that showed 20 years of service and multiple deployments. It was a power move, and James knew it, but he didn't care. These people had terrorized his sick daughter, and now they were going to face someone who couldn't be intimidated or dismissed. Brittany's mother, Karen Hughes, arrived first with her daughter. Karen was dressed in expensive clothes and had the attitude of someone who was used to getting her way. She started off by saying that this whole thing was being blown out of proportion and that kids will be kids. James let her talk for about 30 seconds before he cut her off, with a voice that had commanded men in combat zones. He told Karen Hughes that her daughter had told his daughter she hoped the cancer would kill her. He told her about the organized campaign of harassment that had driven a sick child to the point of depression and suicidal thoughts. He showed her printed copies of every social media post, every cruel message, every incident that had been documented. He laid it all out like evidence at a trial, and Karen's face went from defensive to pale to horrified as she realized the extent of what her daughter had done. James turned to Brittany, who was slumped in her chair trying to make herself invisible. He asked her if everything he had just described was true. Brittany nodded without looking up, tears starting to run down her face. James asked her why she had targeted Maya. Brittany mumbled something about it being just jokes, but James's expression made her stop. He told her that jokes were supposed to be funny, and that nothing about what she had done was funny. The meeting with Nicole's and Amanda's parents went similarly. Both families arrived defensive and left shaken. James presented evidence that couldn't be denied or explained away. He made it clear that this wasn't just kids being mean, but a serious pattern of harassment that had real consequences. He told them that Maya's oncologist had documented how the stress was affecting her recovery and that they could be held legally responsible for that. By the end of all 3 meetings, agreements had been signed. The girls would make public apologies to Maya in front of the whole school. They would complete 50 hours of community service at a cancer treatment center, where they would see firsthand what patients like Maya dealt with. They would attend mandatory counseling sessions about empathy and the impact of bullying, and if there was even one more incident, they would be expelled immediately and the Carters would pursue legal action. James also insisted on meeting with the parents alone, without the girls present. He told them bluntly that their daughters had tried to break his daughter during the hardest time of her life. The following week, Principal Harris announced that there would be a mandatory school assembly on Friday morning. The announcement didn't say what it was about, but rumors spread quickly through Riverside High School. Some students had heard that a military guy had been at the school meeting with the principal and with Brittany's family. Others had heard that Maya was coming back to school and that something big was going to happen. The hallways buzzed with speculation and nervous energy. Maya spent that week preparing herself mentally to go back to school. Her father sat with her every evening and they talked about what to expect and how to handle difficult situations. James taught her some of the mental techniques he used in combat situations, ways to stay calm under pressure, and not let other people's actions control her emotions. He reminded her that she was strong and brave and that she had nothing to be ashamed of. Sophie came over to visit Maya several times that week. The two girls had become closer through everything that had happened, and Maya was grateful to have at least one real friend. Sophie told her that things at school had been weird, with teachers watching everyone more carefully, and Brittany and her friends looking scared and subdued. Some students were saying that Maya's dad was like super intense, and that Brittany's mom had come out of their meeting crying. Friday morning arrived and Maya put on her favorite purple sweater and jeans. She chose a bright headscarf that her aunt had sent her, one covered in butterflies and flowers. She looked at herself in the mirror and took a deep breath. Her father came up behind her and put his hands on her shoulders. He told her she looked beautiful and strong, and that he was proud of her. Maya smiled at him in the mirror and said she was ready. The whole Carter family drove to the school together. James was in his full dress uniform with all his medals and ribbons displayed. Linda was dressed professionally like she was going to court, which in a way she was. Even Kenny came along, staying home from his elementary school for the morning. They walked into Riverside High School together, and Maya felt protected and supported in a way she hadn't felt in months. Principal Harris met them at the entrance and shook James's hand nervously. He led them to a private room near the auditorium, where they would wait until it was time for the assembly. James asked if everything was arranged the way they had discussed, and Principal Harris assured him it was. The principal looked stressed but determined, like he knew this was important and didn't want to mess it up. Students filed into the auditorium talking and laughing, not sure what to expect but treating it like a break from regular classes. Teachers stood along the walls looking serious, having been briefed earlier about what would happen. Brittany and her friends sat together in the middle section looking nervous and small. Sophie sat near the front, having saved a seat for Maya even though she didn't know if Maya would sit with the other students or not. When everyone was settled, Principal Harris walked onto the stage and the auditorium got quiet. He spoke into the microphone and his voice was firm and serious. He told the students that they were there to discuss something very important, something that affected the entire school community. He said that bullying had been a problem at Riverside High School and that it was going to stop starting today. He explained that they had a special guest who was going to talk to them. Commander James Carter walked onto the stage and the room went completely silent. Even from the back of the auditorium, his presence was commanding. He was tall and powerfully built, and the uniform made him look even more impressive. The medals on his chest caught the light, and students who didn't know anything about the military could still tell that this was someone important and not to be messed with. James stood at the microphone and let the silence stretch for a moment while he looked out at the sea of young faces. Then he introduced himself in a clear, strong voice that carried easily through the auditorium. He said his name was Commander James Carter, that he was a Navy SEAL and that he was Maya Carter's father. A ripple went through the crowd as students made the connection. Maya, sitting in the private room watching on a monitor, felt her heart swell with pride and love for her father. James began to speak, and every student in that auditorium listened. He told them about his career, about 20 years of serving his country and leading men and women in dangerous situations. He talked about what it meant to be a warrior and what real strength looked like. He said that in all his years of facing enemy combatants and completing dangerous missions, Nothing had made him angrier than learning that his 15-year-old daughter, who was fighting cancer, had been bullied at this school. His voice got harder as he continued. He said that Maya had been diagnosed with lymphoma and was undergoing chemotherapy treatment that made her sick and tired and caused her to lose her hair. He described what cancer treatment was like for a teenager, the pain and fear and uncertainty that came with it. He made the students understand that Maya was already fighting the hardest battle of her life, and then some of her classmates had decided to make that fight even harder. James talked about courage and cowardice. He said that there was no courage in attacking someone who was vulnerable. He said that real strength wasn't about making other people feel small, it was about lifting them up. He talked about honor and integrity and the kind of character that actually mattered. He spoke from the heart, but also with the authority of someone who had lived these principles his entire adult life. Then he got specific. He didn't name names, but he made it clear he was talking to certain people in the audience. He said that some students at this school had created a campaign of harassment against his daughter. They had mocked her appearance, spread lies about her, posted cruel things on social media, and gone out of their way to make her feel worthless. He said they had told her they hoped she would die, and that those words would stay with Maya for the rest of her life. The auditorium was so quiet, you could have heard a pin drop. Some students looked ashamed. Others looked shocked, like they hadn't realized how bad things had been. Brittany was crying silently in her seat, and Nicole and Amanda looked like they wanted to disappear. James let the weight of his words sink in before continuing. He told the students that actions had consequences. He said the people who had bullied Maya were facing serious consequences, and that anyone who tried to continue the harassment would face even more serious ones. He made it clear that he wasn't going away, that he would be watching and that the school would be watching. He said that Riverside High School was going to become a place where kindness mattered, and where students looked out for each other instead of tearing each other down. James's voice softened a little as he talked about Maya directly. He said she was one of the strongest people he had ever met, stronger than most of the soldiers he had served with. He said she got up every day and fought to survive while also trying to keep up with school and be a normal teenager. He said she deserved respect and kindness and support, and that every student dealing with difficult challenges deserved the same thing. He wrapped up his speech by challenging the students to be better. He said they had a choice every single day about what kind of people they wanted to be. They could choose to be kind or cruel, brave or cowardly, honorable or shameful. He said that the choices they made now would shape the kind of adults they became. He told them that real warriors protected people who couldn't protect themselves, and that he expected them to be warriors for each other. When James finished speaking, the auditorium erupted in applause. It started with a few students and then spread until everyone was clapping. Some students stood up and then more followed until the whole auditorium was on its feet, giving Commander Carter a standing ovation. James nodded in acknowledgement and then walked off the stage, with the same confident stride he had entered. With Principal Harris returned to the microphone and told students that there would be additional assemblies and workshops in the coming weeks about bullying, prevention, and creating a positive school culture. He reminded them that the school's policies on harassment were being strictly enforced, and that anyone who violated those policies would face immediate consequences, including suspension or expulsion. He told them to think about what Commander Carter had said and to make good choices. As students filed out of the auditorium, the mood was different than when they had entered. They were quiet and thoughtful instead of loud and joking. Some of them were crying. Others were talking in hushed voices about Maya and about what her father had said. Teachers noticed that students were being more careful and respectful with each other, like they were suddenly aware that their words and actions mattered. Brittany and her friends left the auditorium looking devastated. Other students avoided them or gave them dirty looks, and they walked with their heads down toward their next classes. The social hierarchy had shifted in the span of 30 minutes, and suddenly, being associated with the bullies was social poison. Brittany's reign as queen of the school was over, ended by a Navy SEAL father who refused to let anyone hurt his daughter. Maya watched the end of the assembly from the private room with tears streaming down her face. Her father came back and hugged her tight, and she told him thank you over and over. The afternoon after the assembly felt surreal to Maya. She walked into her English class and students actually moved aside to let her through instead of pretending she didn't exist. Mrs. Patterson, Her English teacher smiled warmly at her and said it was good to see her back. Sophie practically tackled her with a hug when she sat down, whispering that the assembly was incredible and that her dad was basically a superhero. Other students who had never spoken to Maya before came up to her between classes. Some of them apologized for not standing up for her when they saw what was happening. Others said they thought her headscarf looked pretty, or asked how she was feeling. A few students who were dealing with their own challenges, like a boy with severe acne and a girl who was overweight, thanked her quietly for speaking up because they hoped it would make things better for them too. But the biggest change was with Brittany and her friends. They stayed far away from Maya, keeping their heads down and avoiding eye contact. In the hallway, Maya passed Brittany going the opposite direction, and Brittany immediately looked at the floor and moved to give her space. The power dynamic had completely reversed, and while Maya didn't want to make anyone feel the way she had felt, she couldn't help feeling a sense of justice. That weekend, Principal Harris sent out an email to all parents about the new anti-bullying initiatives the school would be implementing. The email explained that a comprehensive program was being developed with input from leadership experts and that both students and staff would receive training. It mentioned that there had been serious incidents of bullying at the school and that the administration was committed to making Riverside High a safe and supportive environment for all students. Some parents responded supportively, thanking the principal for taking action. Others complained that the assembly had been too intense or that their children had come home upset. A few parents whose kids had been involved in bullying other students complained that their children were now being ostracized and that the school was creating a hostile environment for them. Principal Harris forwarded some of these complaints to Commander Carter, who responded with detailed accounts of what those students had done and pointed out that facing social consequences for bullying was not the same as being bullied. Over the next 2 weeks, the promised changes started taking shape. A counselor who specialized in conflict resolution and restorative justice came to the school twice a week to work with students. Mrs. Bennett and several other teachers formed a committee to review and strengthen school policies about harassment and cyberbullying. Commander Carter worked with his contact to develop a character education program that would be integrated into advisory periods throughout the year. Maya continued going to school and slowly started to feel more comfortable. She still had hard days, especially when she had chemo treatments and would come back exhausted and nauseous. But now when she walked through the hallways looking sick and tired, students asked if she needed help or offered to carry her books. Teachers checked in with her regularly and gave her extensions on assignments when she needed them. She wasn't invisible anymore, and she wasn't a target. She was just Maya, a student who was dealing with cancer and doing her best. 3 weeks after the assembly, Brittany approached Maya in the hallway. It was the first time she had come near Maya since everything happened, and Maya tensed up automatically. Sophie was with her and stepped closer protectively, but Brittany looked genuinely nervous and her eyes were red like she had been crying. She asked quietly if she could talk to Maya alone for a minute. Maya looked at Sophie, who gave her a questioning look but nodded. They stepped into an empty classroom nearby while Sophie waited outside. Brittany stood awkwardly by the door like she was ready to run if needed. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Brittany took a deep breath, and the words came tumbling out. She said she was sorry, truly and deeply sorry for everything she had done. She said she knew that sorry wasn't enough and could never undo the pain she had caused. She explained with tears running down her face that her parents were getting divorced and her dad had moved out and she had felt like her whole life was falling apart. When she saw Maya dealing with something so much worse with so much grace and courage, it made her feel weak and ashamed. Instead of being inspired by Maya's strength, she had tried to tear her down to make herself feel better. Brittany said she understood if Maya hated her and never wanted to forgive her. She said she didn't deserve forgiveness and that she would have to live with what she did for the rest of her life. But she wanted Maya to know that she was getting help now, seeing a therapist, and learning about why she had acted the way she did. She said she was trying to become a better person, someone who built people up instead of tearing them down. Maya listened to all of this with her arms crossed, studying Brittany's face to see if the apology was genuine. She had imagined this moment many times, had imagined telling Brittany exactly how much she had hurt her, and making her feel as small as Maya had felt. But now that it was happening, Maya found she didn't want revenge. She just wanted it to be over. She told Brittany that what she did was wrong and cruel, and that it had damaged Maya in ways that would take a long time to heal. She said she wasn't ready to be friends, and might never be. But she appreciated the apology, and she hoped Brittany really was trying to change. She said that if Brittany wanted to make things right, she should use her experience to help other people who were being bullied or going through hard times. She should become the kind of person she should have been from the beginning. Brittany nodded and wiped her eyes. She asked if there was anything she could do to help Maya now. Maya thought about it and said that Brittany could start by standing up for other people who were being picked on. There was a kid in their math class who stuttered and got made fun of, and a girl in the cafeteria who always sat alone because she was poor and wore secondhand clothes. If Brittany wanted to prove she had changed, she could start there. The conversation ended and Maya left feeling strange and emotional. She told Sophie what had happened, and Sophie said she was amazed that Maya could be so mature and forgiving. But Maya said it wasn't really about forgiving Brittany. It was about not letting anger and bitterness take over her life when she was already fighting cancer. She needed her energy for getting healthy, not for hating people who had hurt her. Commander Carter was proud when Maya told him about the conversation with Brittany. He said that mercy was a form of strength and that Maya was showing wisdom beyond her years. But he also made it clear that Brittany was on probation and that he would be watching to make sure she followed through on her promises. One strike, and the deal was off. Maya agreed that was fair. Nicole and Amanda also apologized to Maya separately, though their apologies seemed less genuine and more like they were doing what they had been told to do. Maya accepted them politely, but didn't offer them the same opportunity for redemption that she had given Brittany. She figured they would have to prove themselves through actions over time. As November turned into December, Maya noticed real changes in the school culture. Brittany kept her word and started sitting with the lonely girl in the cafeteria, bringing her friend group with her and making the girl feel included. When someone made fun of the boy who stuttered, several students immediately told them to stop. A group of kids started a kindness club that did small nice things for people randomly, like leaving encouraging notes or bringing treats for teachers. Maya's health was also improving. Her oncologist was pleased with how she was responding to treatment and said that if things continued this way, she could be done with chemo by spring. Maya's hair was starting to grow back in little patches under her headscarf, and she had more energy than she had in months. She was even starting to think about what she wanted to do after high school, something she hadn't let herself think about when she was in the depths of despair. Commander Carter had to return to his unit in January, but before he left, he completed the character education program he had been developing. The program focused on leadership, integrity, courage, and service to others. It used real-world examples from military service, but also from everyday life. Principal Harris was so impressed that he decided to make it a permanent part of the school curriculum and to share it with other schools in the district. The night before James had to leave, the Carter family had a special dinner together. Maya had made her father a card thanking him for everything he had done. She wrote that he had saved her life just as surely as the doctors and chemotherapy had. She told him he was her hero and that she wanted to be like him when she grew up, strong enough to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. James read the card with tears in his eyes and hugged his daughter close. He told her she was already strong enough and that she had proven it by surviving everything she had been through. He said he was proud to be her father and that he knew she was going to do amazing things with her life. He reminded her that even though he had to go back to his unit, he was always just a phone call away and he would come home immediately if she ever needed him. Winter break came and went, and Maya returned to school in January feeling stronger than she had in months. Her last chemotherapy treatment was scheduled for March, and her doctors were optimistic about her prognosis. Her hair was growing back in tight curls that she loved, though she still wore headscarves sometimes because she had grown to like them. They had become part of her identity during her hardest time, and she wasn't ready to give them up completely. The new semester brought new classes and new challenges, but Maya felt ready to face them. She had been accepted into the school's peer mentoring program, which paired older students with freshmen who were having a hard time adjusting to high school. Maya was matched with a shy girl named Kendra, who had just moved from another state and didn't know anyone. Maya remembered how alone she had felt when she first came to Riverside High, and she was determined to make sure Kendra had a better experience. Sophie and Maya had become best friends, the kind of friendship forged through surviving hard times together. They spent lunch together every day, joined the same clubs, and had sleepovers on weekends. Sophie's parents adored Maya and treated her like a second daughter. Maya's mother was grateful that her daughter had found such a good friend, someone who had stood by her when most people had walked away. Brittany had followed through on her promise to change. She completed her community service hours at the Cancer Treatment Center, which had been eye-opening for her. She met children younger than Maya who were fighting leukemia and other cancers, and she saw firsthand how hard treatment was. The experience humbled her and made her understand the magnitude of what she had done to Maya. She wrote Maya a letter after completing her service, thanking her for suggesting it and saying it had changed her perspective on life. The relationship between Maya and Brittany remained complicated. They weren't friends and probably never would be, but they had reached a place of mutual respect. Brittany had genuinely changed, and Maya could see it in how she treated other people. Brittany used her social influence to make Riverside High a kinder place, shutting down gossip and standing up for students who were being picked on. It didn't erase what she had done, but it was something. In February, Mrs. Bennett asked Maya if she would be willing to share her story with the school newspaper. The paper was doing a special issue about overcoming challenges and creating positive change. Maya was hesitant at first, nervous about making herself vulnerable again. But she talked it over with her parents and Sophie, and they all encouraged her to do it. They said her story could help other students who were being bullied or dealing with serious illness. Maya agreed and spent several afternoons being interviewed by the student journalist, a senior named Carlos who was respectful and thoughtful with his questions. She told him about her diagnosis, about the bullying, about her father's intervention, and about how the school had changed. She talked about the importance of speaking up and asking for help, and about how suffering in silence only makes things worse. She wanted other students to know they didn't have to face their battles alone. The article came out in late February, and it was powerful. Carlos had captured Maya's voice in her story beautifully. He included quotes from Principal Harris about the changes the school had made, from Mrs. Bennett about recognizing signs of bullying, and from Sophie about being a good friend to someone in crisis. He even included a short statement from Brittany about taking responsibility for her actions and learning from her mistakes. The response to the article was overwhelming. Students Maya didn't even know came up to her to thank her for sharing her story. Several students privately told her they had been dealing with bullying or family problems or mental health struggles, and that reading about what she had been through made them feel less alone. Teachers incorporated the article into their lessons about empathy and civic responsibility. The article was shared on social media and picked up by local news outlets. A reporter from the city newspaper contacted Principal Harris and asked to do a larger story about Riverside High's transformation from a school with a bullying problem to a model for positive school culture. The principal agreed but insisted that any story focus on the students and the changes they had made, rather than on the administration. The resulting article featured Maya prominently and highlighted the character education program that Commander Carter had developed. Maya's father saw the article while deployed overseas and sent her a video message saying how proud he was. He said she had taken something painful and used it to help other people, which was the mark of a true leader. He told her she was making a difference in the world, and that he couldn't wait to see what else she would accomplish. Maya watched the video dozens of times, drawing strength from her father's words whenever she had a hard day. March arrived with the promise of spring and Maya's final chemotherapy treatment. The whole Carter family went to the hospital together for this appointment, making it a celebration instead of just another medical procedure. Maya's oncologist told her the latest scans looked great and that all signs pointed to remission. They would continue monitoring her closely, but the active treatment phase was over. Maya cried happy tears for the first time in almost a year. The nurses who had cared for Maya throughout her treatment threw her a small party in the infusion room. They gave her a certificate declaring her a cancer warrior and a care package full of things to help her recover her strength. They told her they would miss seeing her, but were thrilled she was graduating from their care. Maya hugged each of them and thanked them for being so kind during her darkest days. Back at school, Sophie and some of Maya's other friends organized a surprise celebration for her last day of chemo. They decorated her locker with ribbons and balloons and positive messages. Students she barely knew signed a giant card congratulating her. The Kindness Club brought her a basket of her favorite snacks and a t-shirt that said, "Warrior" in sparkly letters. Maya was overwhelmed by the outpouring of love and support. Principal Harris called Maya to his office that afternoon, and for a second she felt the old fear before remembering that she wasn't in trouble anymore. He told her that the school board had heard about everything she had been through and about the positive changes she had helped inspire at Riverside High. They wanted to honor her with a special recognition at the next school board meeting, and they hoped she and her family would attend. Maya agreed, though public speaking still made her nervous. The school board meeting was 2 weeks away, which gave her time to prepare. Sophie helped her pick out an outfit and practice what she might say if they asked her to speak. Linda took her shopping for a new headscarf to match her outfit, and Maya chose one with bright geometric patterns that made her feel confident and strong. The night of the school board meeting, the Carter family arrived early and sat in the front row. Commander Carter had gotten special leave to fly home for the occasion, which made Maya happier than any award could. The meeting room was packed with people from the school community, including Principal Harris, Mrs. Bennett, Sophie and her family, and even Brittany, who came to support Maya. When it was time for Maya's recognition, Principal Harris introduced her by telling the board and the audience about everything she had overcome. He talked about her cancer diagnosis and treatment, about the bullying she had endured, and about how she had transformed her pain into purpose. He said that Maya Carter represented the best of what students could be and that Riverside High was a better place because of her. The board president called Maya up to the front and presented her with a plaque honoring her courage and leadership. Then she asked if Maya would like to say a few words. Maya took a deep breath and stepped up to the microphone. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady as she began to speak. She thanked her parents for always believing in her and fighting for her. She thanked her father specifically for showing her what real strength looked like, and for teaching the school that protecting others was more important than protecting reputations. She thanked Principal Harris and Mrs. Bennett and all the teachers who had worked to make Riverside High safer. She thanked Sophie for being a true friend when Maya needed one most. Then Maya talked about what she had learned from her experiences. She said that cancer had taught her she was stronger than she thought, but that bullying had taught her that even strong people need help sometimes. She said that asking for help wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. She encouraged any students who were being bullied or facing hard times to speak up and find trusted adults who would listen and act. Maya said she was grateful for the changes at Riverside High, but that the work wasn't finished. She challenged everyone in the room to keep building a culture of kindness and courage. She said that schools should be places where students lifted each other up instead of tearing each other down, and that it was everyone's responsibility to make that happen. She finished by saying that she was proud to be a student at Riverside High, and that she hoped to make her school and her community proud of her in return. The room erupted in applause when Maya finished speaking. People stood and clapped, and some were wiping away tears. Commander Carter looked like he might burst with pride. 6 months had passed since that night at the school board meeting, and Maya Carter stood in front of the bathroom mirror in her house looking at her reflection. Her hair had grown back thick and curly, reaching past her shoulders now. She smiled at herself, touching the soft curls that she had missed so much during treatment. Today was a special day. Today she would speak at the school assembly one more time, but this time as someone who had survived and thrived. It was the last week of the school year, and Riverside High had asked Maya to address the student body at their final assembly. Principal Harris wanted her to talk about her journey and the changes the school had made over the past year. Maya had agreed immediately, knowing this was her chance to complete the circle that had started with her father's powerful speech back in October. Her latest scan results had come back clear. The doctors used the word remission, which meant the cancer was gone and showed no signs of returning. Maya would need regular checkups for years to come, but for now she was healthy and strong. Her hair had grown back, her energy had returned, and she felt like herself again. Better than herself, actually. She felt like a stronger, wiser version of who she had been before cancer. Commander Carter was home again, His deployment finally finished. He had been promoted and would be stationing at a base only 2 hours away, which meant he could come home most weekends. The whole family was relieved to have him closer. Maya had missed her father terribly during his deployment. Though their regular video calls had helped, having him home made everything feel complete and safe. That morning, the Carter family had breakfast together like they did every morning when James was home. Kenny was excited about summer vacation starting soon and wouldn't stop talking about the baseball camp he was attending. Linda reminded everyone about the college campus visits they had planned for July, even though Maya was only going to be a sophomore. Linda wanted to start looking early so Maya would have time to figure out what she wanted to study. Maya had been thinking a lot about her future lately. Before cancer, she hadn't really known what she wanted to do with her life. But now she had some ideas. She was interested in psychology and counseling, helping other kids who were dealing with trauma or bullying. She was also interested in oncology, maybe becoming a nurse or doctor who worked with cancer patients. She wanted to use her experience to help others, to turn her pain into something meaningful and good. The drive to school felt different than it had on that first day back in October. Maya wasn't nervous or scared. She was confident and calm, ready to share her story and celebrate how far both she and the school had come. Sophie was meeting her at the entrance, and they planned to sit together during the assembly before Maya went up on stage. Riverside High looked the same on the outside, but inside everything had changed. The hallways that had once felt hostile and dangerous now felt welcoming. Students greeted Maya warmly as she walked to her locker. The walls were decorated with kindness posters and positive messages. The bulletin boards featured stories of students helping each other and making a difference in the community. The culture shift was real and visible. Sophie was waiting by the entrance like promised, bouncing excitedly. She hugged Maya and said she couldn't wait to hear the speech. Sophie had helped Maya practice it over the weekend, offering suggestions and encouragement. The two girls had become inseparable over the year, their friendship deepened by everything they had been through together. They walked to the auditorium together, arms linked, talking and laughing. The auditorium was already filling up with students and teachers. Maya saw Mrs. Bennett sitting with the other faculty members and waved. Mrs. Bennett had become more than just a teacher to Maya. She had been an advocate and a protector, someone who had finally seen what was happening and refused to look away. They had formed a special bond over the year. Maya spotted Brittany sitting in the middle section with a group of girls that included the lonely girl from the cafeteria who now had friends. Brittany caught Maya's eye and gave her a small smile and a thumbs up. Their relationship would never be simple or easy, but it had evolved into something like respect and understanding. Brittany had truly changed, and Maya could acknowledge that without forgetting what had happened. Principal Harris took the stage and welcomed everyone to the final assembly of the year. He talked about what a transformational year it had been for Riverside High. He mentioned the new programs they had implemented, the improved school climate surveys, and the significant reduction in bullying incidents. He said that the school had become a model for the district and that other schools were copying their programs and policies. Then he introduced Maya, and his voice was full of warmth and pride as he described her journey. He called her a beacon of courage and resilience, someone who had faced unimaginable challenges and emerged stronger. He said that Maya had changed Riverside High by being brave enough to speak up and by choosing to use her experience to help others rather than becoming bitter or defeated. Maya walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. Students stood and cheered, and she felt her eyes getting wet with happy tears. She stood at the microphone and waited for the noise to die down, taking in the sea of faces looking up at her. She thought about that first assembly when her father had stood on this same stage and defended her. Now she was defending herself and everyone else who needed a voice. She began by thanking everyone for the warm welcome and for the incredible year they had shared. She said that when she first came to Riverside High back in October, she was scared and sick and alone. She talked about the bullying she had experienced and how it had nearly broken her on top of fighting cancer. She was honest about how dark things had gotten and how close she had come to giving up. But then she talked about the turning point, when she finally told her parents what was happening and her father came home to fix things. She described the first assembly when Commander Carter had spoken, and how that day had changed everything. She said that her father had taught the school that real strength meant protecting others, and that the students of Riverside High had taken that lesson to heart. Maya talked about all the positive changes she had seen over the year. She mentioned the Kindness Club and the peer mentoring program, and the character education curriculum. She talked about students standing up for each other and teachers being more aware and responsive. She said that Riverside High had transformed from a place where she felt unsafe to a place where she felt valued and supported. She shared that she was now in remission and that her last scan had been clear. The auditorium erupted in cheers and applause at this news, and Maya had to wait for them to quiet down before continuing. She said that beating cancer had taught her she was strong, but that the support of her school community had taught her she didn't have to be strong alone. She said that everyone needed help sometimes and that asking for help was brave, not weak. Maya looked directly at the section where the freshmen sat and spoke to them specifically. She said that high school was hard and that everyone was fighting battles that others couldn't see. She encouraged them to be kind because they never knew what someone else was going through. She told them that their words and actions mattered more than they realized, and that they had the power to make someone's day better or worse with their choices. Then she addressed the students who might be dealing with bullying or other challenges. She told them they deserved to be safe and happy at school, and that if they were being hurt by others, they should tell a trusted adult and keep telling until someone listened and helped. She said that suffering in silence only made things worse, and that there were people who cared and would fight for them if they knew what was happening. Maya talked about forgiveness and second chances. She said that people could change if they were willing to do the hard work of examining themselves and their behavior. She said she had seen real change in people who had hurt her, and that while she couldn't forget what happened, she could choose not to let it define her future. She said that holding on to anger and bitterness was like drinking poison and expecting someone else to get sick. She challenged the students to keep building on the progress they had made. She said that creating a positive school culture wasn't a one-time thing, but an ongoing commitment that required effort from everyone. She told them to keep standing up for each other, keep being kind, keep making